What's the craziest crime you or somebody in your family has committed? My father committed one of the first computer crimes in the 90s. A ton of files were corrupted due to a code he created because they fired him. FBI invaded our home and arrested him. Was sent to federal prison for 4 years. Which was interesting because there was never a crime committed of its nature before. They made a forensics file episode about it. Edit. If anyone is curious. Twin brothers boosted a car and robbed a 711 like 1/2 mile from house. Ditched car 10 houses from theirs. How were they caught? Officers respond to alarm triggered by Clark. Officer. Got an alarm here, what happened? Clark. Tim and Tom came in and robbed the store. Officer. How do you know it was these guys? Clark. They are 6'4" twins who come in every day. I know their shape and voice. The car 911 operator. 911, what is your emergency? Neighbor. Was watching TV and 2 guys park a car in front of my house. One guy got out with like a Windex bottle and cleaned all the door handles and door areas. Then opened door and the other guy took the stuff and cleaned the inside areas. Then they ran off up the street. Dispatch. Can you describe the 2 individuals? Neighbor. Well, it was Tim and Tom, the twins that live up the street from me. They're like 6'4" and they are twins. My cousin's husband got caught on a predator chase's live stream trying to kidnap a 14-year-old boy. My brother got completely inebriated one night and stupidly drove home. He woke up early in the morning to the sound of a baby crying. He looked around and noticed he didn't recognize the house. He quickly got up and walked outside to his car halfway in the driveway street and still running. Got in his car and drove away as quickly as he could. Turns out it was some random house about 5-10 minutes away from our actual house. He never knew whose house it was and never got caught. He also slowed down his drinking after that. My uncle used to dress up with a group of friends as D agents in the 80s and raid crack houses. Only to take the drugs and consume them. In college we got a new printer and printed off a bunch of fairly convincing $20 bills. Roughed them up and used them at a bunch of fast food restaurants. Didn't realize how dumb it was until years later. Back in the late 90s, 2 boys I lifeguarded with in the summer were arrested for making fake money. I was actually shocked. Because they were both good kids. And seemed pretty straight. Apparently they had a whole suite set up. And the FBI investigated them for a year before arresting. Neither served any time. Since they were 16 and no priors. And assume parents got great lawyers. One is an engineer now. No clue about the other. My father. When I was still very young. Used a fake name and pretended to be a wedding planner for a young couple. That young couple hired him. Since he seemed trustworthy and is an excellent liar. Giving him access to their savings for wedding supplies and such that would be needed. Instead. He stole all of the money out of their account and then ran away with it. As far as I am aware. He was never caught and the money was never returned to them. The worst part is that the poor couple never even got their wedding and had almost nothing left afterwards. Whoa. Your father was a real scumbag. My wife's cousin was arrested for the manufacturing of meth. 3 times and was sentenced to life. His mom and dad all cooked meth and supplied basically the entire area. The worst part is that during his last arrest he was taking the fall for his parents. They were in large part why our small sleazy little trash heap of a town was one of the top 5 for meth in the United States at the time. Also, my great aunt disappeared off the face of the earth after her daughter's wedding and nobody had any clue what happened. Foul play wasn't suspected or anything, however her shotgun was missing. Well, like a month ago we found out she died last year. She had apparently skipped jury duty to go to the wedding and instead of doing anything logical she straight up ran away and lived in hiding in a backwoods town in Washington. No letters or anything, she just decided that the most effective way to get around jury duty to go to a wedding was to live in hiding for 30 years. Edit. My uncle stole one of those oil candles from our table at a Hard Rock cafe once. When we got outside he pulled it from his jacket with it still lit. My sister shoplifts uncontrollably. She shoplifts everything everywhere she goes. Her daughter just turned 1 and she has stolen every bit of formula her daughter ever used. My grandpa wouldn't obey the train warnings. He would try and beat the train rather than wait. First time he got hit in his new convertible on the way to prom with my grandma. Had barely started on the payments and car was totaled. Luckily they were both okay. Second time was a little less reckless but still dumb. He was driving a semi and it broke down on the tracks. He kept trying to get the tractor trailer to start, rather than lose his rig and load. Semi got hit by the train. Total loss and ed up his back. My dad's cousin erased all family member names from a property deed except for his father's. The paperwork had been water damaged so there was no easy way to tell what should have been there. Family law says that he also paid off some local politicians' office workers to make the new deed stand. My friend got blackout drunk and stole a bulldozer that had the keys left in it. He turned it on and obviously didn't know how to drive it, so he just ended up making the scoopy part go up and down for a bit before the cops came. They actually let him go too. Siscopy part. A distant cousin got her terminally ill father to give her power of attorney and then stole all of his money so she wouldn't have to split it with her brother. Don't worry. She did go to jail as her rush to clean him out involved a lot of fraud and forgery. Edit 2. Man. It is slightly depressing how many of you have similar stories. What's up with people? He's dead now. But years ago my relative got in a bar fight and lost, so he went to his vehicle to get his rifle. Fortunately the police arrested him on the way into the bar, so his charges were a lot less. Still did jail time. My uncle sold Tim Allen the cocaine that got him sent to prison in the late 70s. I used to drive for my weed dealer. I was a new buyer but I never asked questions and was cool with him. His car broke down and asked if anyone could drive him. I said I would. And he liked that. I have my back windows tinted but not my front windows. I'd pick him up and we'd drive almost all day. It was pretty chill. He's give me free weed and pay me $250 a day. I still worked my part-time delivery job, so I was very happy. He got his car fixed and didn't need me to drive him around anymore. Which is fine, considering his ex snitched on him and he got busted a couple weeks later. Cousin was taking care of a woman in coma. He RP'd her. Little he knew was that her parents had set a webcam to check regularly if she would wake up. My grandfather's cousin stabbed a waiter to death because he wouldn't let him use the employees only restroom in his restaurant. My husband's dad killed the guy who his then girlfriend was cheating on him with. He was supposed to serve a life term but got out because of a clerical error. He did manual labor on a local park and apparently the guys who helped were supposed to get a reduced sentence. However, he was not supposed to. I think my husband talked about it once. Also, my husband's half-brother, same murderous dad, killed his business partner. He would have gotten away with it, however. He moved the body when he found out construction was going to start in that spot. And what were they going to build there? Prison. He's currently serving a life sentence. My husband has never met his half-brother. He also has 2 half-sisters from the same dad who are law-abiding citizens. 2 half-sisters that didn't get caught. I worked at a movie theater when Back to the Future was originally released. We used to take the entire movie ticket instead of tearing them and resell them to the next group coming in. The old theater was massive. Sat 600 people. We probably made about $15k between 2 of us in month or so. Adjusted for inflation, it's about $37k. We were the richest high school kids in our town. My dad got into a bar fight around 21 or so. Hit a guy so hard he killed him. He went to prison of course, but while working along the road he stopped another prisoner that attacked a guard and tried to escape. My dad was released for that. He never drank after that, and if he got angry he just walked out of the house to cool off. He turned 81 a week ago and he's the nicest, easiest going guy you would ever meet. He never judges anyone. He once said to me, We all make mistakes. For the record, I only heard the story about tennis ago from my brother. He told him during a road trip. He lived in a small town and I have no idea what prison he was at or the official reason he was released, but considering it was probably around Psi-61 Psi-62, they probably used whatever reason they wanted to for his release. Edit. Thanks for the award. This was a couple of generations back, early 20th century, but there was this guy who was constantly getting drunk and harassing my great aunt. So, one of her male friends dressed up in an Easter bunny outfit, put a bat in its giant fake carrot and beat the dude with it. He got away with it, but I'm sure it helped that half the community was waiting for the day the guy's liver finally gave out. Edit. Okay. One small clarification. The bat in question was a baseball bat, not a flying mammal, though that's certainly an interesting visual and I can't say I'm sorry for my small role in creating that image. Cousin got busted robbing a bank. Got sentenced to jail. Proceeded to break out of jail with his cellmate and went on the run. Fast forward a few months and he's living in a hotel room with his cellmate. Cellmate orders a pizza to the room. Bad idea. Delivery guy recognized them and reported them to the police. They get arrested again and shortly after my cousin killed himself in prison. My cousin had a wife and a kid and got into a nasty coke habit. We don't bring him up anymore. My dad told me he once snuck into a tire warehouse. He cut the alarm and came in through a window on the roof and stole a bunch of tires. Does he have any leftover tires? An uncle robbed a bank, or was an accessory to the robbers. IDK. His brilliant escape when the police showed up was to go to the roof and jump off. He didn't do time. Just had to go to the hospital for a broken leg. I'll have to ask my mom when I get a chance. She knows the story better than I do. Aim for the bushes. Not sure if it should be considered a crime, but one of my great aunts was in an abusive marriage with a war vet who took to beating her and forcing her to play Russian roulette when he drank. One night she managed to rig the gun so when he took his turn he blew his brains out. She wasn't charged. My uncle went to prison for chaining a cop to the back of his bike and driving down the highway. Edit. I feel like an edit is needed here because I want to say I am not glorifying what my uncle did. I simply answered the question asked. This happened in the 1960s before I was born. So I do not have many details due to the timing. In fact, he married into the family, and that side of my family is not very close at all. What I do know is my uncle was a part of a very violent gang. I know nothing about what led to the attempted murder. Yes. The cop survived somehow. So I do not know if the cop was good or bad. But I do not believe very many people, if any, deserve to be tortured in such a manner, or any manner. My dad's side of the family grew up as New Hampshire Hicks. My grandfather was stabbed in 2 different bar fights and burned down an entire country club because he thought they were too stuck up. He was never caught and went on to earn a bronze and silver star in the Korean War. But unfortunately lost his leg too. Edit. Since this is getting some attention, I thought I might add that my grandfather got his together. Started a successful small business and as a funny twist later joined that same country club as an old man. He never really felt welcome there, my dad said, though. They weren't really his kind of people. My dad, when he was much younger and infinitely more stupid, regularly used to drink drive with his friends. It was the early 70s. And no one really cared. To hear him speak about it now, he can't believe how stupid he was. One night, he and his friend were out drinking. They heard there was a party going on at a pub across town and decided to head over. On the way they go past a large club with a queue of people waiting to go in. My dad decides to show off a bit and pull a skid. He miscalculated, hit a curb and flipped the car, sliding down the road on his roof. The car stops. They get out and leg it. To the cheers of the people in the queue. They get the bus back home and immediately call the police to report the car is stolen. The police knew what had happened, but couldn't prove anything. There is a family legend about some great uncles of mine stealing their dad's corpse from the funeral home. They went out to the woods with it and got drunk. Then returned the body the next morning. Edited to add. So I talked to my mom and I missed or misremembered some wonderful details. They broke into the funeral home by backing Dad's work truck through a wall. Dad was a professional burglar who would have appreciated the irony of a thief's corpse being stolen. Thought it was hilarious. And being proud his sons pulled the stunt off. They played a game of poker with Dad's body. And at some point they got caught because they attended the funeral the next day in handcuffs. My mom said that the father was apparently the one person in our family who never drank. So they weren't going out to get drunk with Dad one last time. The sons likely had a beer though. My dad brought in a banana tree to the US from his home village in Kerala. He literally walked through customs with a tree in a pot in his arms. The customs lady asked him what he was thinking and he just replied that the banana tree was from his mother's garden. The customs lady must have thought my dad was crazy. But she just let him walk right through. We still have that tree and its offspring. Customs lady. This is crazy. Your dad. My granddad accidentally shot his brother in the ass. He meant to shoot something out of his hand. But missed. Drunk. Genius. Hillbilly. Thankfully my dad married well. And I turned out alright. Hold on. He was trying to shoot something out of his hand. And he missed and hit him in the ass. I'm gonna need more story. Or maybe your granddad is just a horrendous shot. Not really a crime as in not necessarily illegal. But my grandfather had two separate families in two different cities. Named both of his firstborn sons after himself. And they both named sons after themselves too, including me. So I share my name with my father and grandfather. As well as a half uncle and at least one cousin. When he was a teenager, my dad robbed a mother's cookies truck. Cookies for months. My great uncle used to follow civil rights protests around to sell them weed. One of my great grandpas drove a truck containing stuff for making alcohol for Al Capone during Prohibition. I was offered a glass of 25 years aged Old Par and I mixed it with some Pepsi. The look of horror on my buddies' faces is still engraved in my memory more than 20 years later. As a 10-year-old I violated Section 508 of the Communications Act of 1934. Received underhanded assistance in a purportedly bona fide contest of intellectual knowledge or intellectual skill. Basically, got manipulated into being on a rigged kids game show. Which was cancelled days before it was supposed to air on Fox because someone spilled the beans. I didn't realize until years later what was actually going on. Edit. My uncle has stolen allegedly over 1,000 cars and done other various nefarious things to fund his heroin habit. Got 8 years in prison. Got clean during that but was diagnosed with cancer after 7 years of prison and died like 2 months later. I ran for president of the United States and won. My aunt came home one evening to find that her son had broken in, killed her dog and was eating it, and then tried to kill her. He was a hardcore addict and it fried his brain badly. Edit. Whoa. Came home from shopping and this blew up. Okay. So to answer some questions, give context. I don't know what he was on at the time. But he was addicted to a myriad of drugs and meth was his drug of choice. It happened a few years ago. And I don't know this side of the family that well. He was arrested. And I believe has recently been released. And for those of you asking about the state of the dog. Exclamation point. It was raw. Think zombie. Less than sign. And thanks to everyone for the awards. I missed 10 seconds ago when I didn't know this happened. Mother's cousin of some level, not sure on removed or third denotations, had a small business in NJ for several years. Never produced, sold, or marketed anything anyone was aware of. He left a message on our answering machine saying, "Goodbye and best wishes." Confused us all. ATF, US Marshals, FBI, D, and IRS raided the shop. Only to find it empty as relative dude was already yachting to Cuba. Where he then jetted to the other side of the planet. Humorless guys in suits randomly checked in with family members for several years thereafter asking for his whereabouts. We had no idea. Got an old-fashioned postcard from him years later from Phuket. Haven't heard a word from him in the years since. No effing idea what he did. My great uncle stole a train station. Like an actual train station. Edit. Bonus crime. He broke into a local police station to steal his own paper criminal record. Didn't destroy or steal any of the others. Just his own. My dad's older brother came home from the war in Vietnam to find that his wife had been cheating on him with his best friend. He locked them both in the friend's house and burned it down with them in it. He held the firefighters off with a rifle until he was sure they couldn't be saved. Then he shot himself. This was before I was born. But I've seen some newspaper clippings about it. Edit. Several people asked how he kept them in the house alone. I asked my mother about it and she said that he locked them together in a small bedroom closet and barricaded the door from the outside so they couldn't get out. This was in the 1970s in New Orleans. I'm not gonna give more info as it'd be easy to tie back to me, same last name, or his daughter who was a little under 2 years old at the time. And I don't want that. Edit number 2. Apparently, it's Vietnam and not Vietnam. Thanks for the corrections. One time my uncle put ranch dressing on a dry-aged NY strip steak that cost $70. My aunt, father's side, kidnapped my sister when we were moving to America mid-80s. I was quite young and my mother and father thought it would be best to keep my sister, a toddler at the time, in safe hands until we settled down for a week or two. My aunt had 3 or 4 miscarriages prior to this happening. Must have driven her mad. About 3 years later, my sister was spotted with my aunt's husband at a farmer's market one day. Family friend tackled the husband. Police got involved. My sister ended up on a plane to the US within a week. My grandmother accidentally killed her second husband when he asked her to shut off the breaker while he did electrical work, but she didn't do it. She shot her daughter's second husband in the back and claimed self-defense. He was an abusive alcoholic cop. She got community service. She forgot to buckle in her brother, who had muscular dystrophy, and had a car wreck on her birthday. When he didn't die, she used a rock to bash his head. Cops found the bloody rock but for some reason didn't think the case was strong enough. She accidentally let her elderly charge drown in the bathtub when she was a home care nurse. The last one I know of. She suffocated her last elderly charge with a pillow. She was found incompetent to stand trial because she faked senility. That was 10 years ago. She's now 88 and ignores all COVID-19 restrictions. She's still driving even. So many men have proposed to her over the decades. They have no idea how lucky they are she said no. My uncle stopped taking his meds and became convinced my aunt was poisoning him. Shot her in the chest. My cousin, her youngest son, found her. My cousin was affiliated with a 1% MC. He was not a patched member but would do jobs for them. He got arrested for beating someone with a baseball bat who allegedly had gambling debt with the MC. He did 3 years and was on parole for a few years after that. He's still a shady character and I wouldn't be surprised if he was still doing dumb. Edit. MC equals motorcycle club. Human smuggling. My great-great-great-grandfather's aunts ran a station on the Underground Railroad. Which was morally right. But legally wrong. I caught a distant cousin once at an Amish farm humping a horse. He's in prison now. My grandfather was often drunk, but when he wasn't drunk he would pretend to be drunk so that the Soviet Communist Party members responsible for interrogating all those who might be opposed to communism thought and said, "Hey, he's a drunk. We'll question him last." This gave him time to gather resources so he could escape with my dad. So, although public inebriation probably almost certainly wasn't a crime in most Eastern European countries at the time, late 40s, he would have been gulag bound if he'd been caught in this charade. Not me, but my buddy at work just talked about this today. We were discussing American Horror Story seasons. He brought up Asylum and said he resonated with it cause he had a family member in an asylum back in the day. Great something or other had been committed and kept there. Why? Cause she had on 3 separate occasions buried guys alive in her yard. She would drug them, drop them in a hole and bury them when they woke up. IDK man.